Hello, good morning. This is Steve Rao, the host of Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. Greet you live from the All-America city of Morrisville in the Research Triangle Park in North Carolina, the 8th largest state in the Union. And I welcome you here to the show from wherever you are in the country or the world. We talk about global affairs, innovation, a post-COVID economy, an increasingly turbulent and divisive world, politically, economically. And we also talk about big things going on in the news. First of all, we want to once again wish everyone a happy Women's History Month, and it'll also be International Women's History Day on March 8th. Now, a couple of things that have happened. Number one, Ukraine is about to be attacked in Bakhmut. It looks like their forces might have to retreat as the Russians are making their move in there. Another train derailed in Ohio, about 40 miles from Columbus. There was no chemicals leaked, but this is the second derailment in a few weeks. And of course, the one previously in Ohio has been very, very, very controversial in terms of illnesses and sicknesses that people are claiming from the wreck. There's going to be some efforts by international countries to help conserve oceans by having conservation space, which is important as we address climate change. And one thing to notice, and we're going to be talking about healthcare issues from time to time, but I found it interesting in the United States, diabetes increased from 3 to 4% between 2009 and 2020, and obesity increased from 33% to 41%. So these numbers are concerning as we're dealing with rising healthcare costs. And finally, in Florida, lawmakers under the leadership of Governor DeSantis are doing what they can to make education change in Florida. One change is basically not allowing gender and sexuality training, educational programs in schools, and giving school systems more power to ban certain things that are taught inside the schools. The legislature convenes tomorrow, and it looks like these bills are most likely to pass, and perhaps a precursor for DeSantis's run for the White House, and perhaps there are changes on the horizon in federal education. But we'll be talking about these and other issues. We welcome now to the show Mark Lee, along with other panelists, as we talk about the issues of the day.
Yep, definitely going to get to the other panelists. I know we've got Lee Newton Rhodes with us as well, and I think Nick Palveda may be joining us also. As a matter of fact, I see that Nick is here. Also, Lee Newton Rhodes, I'm not seeing his camera, but hopefully he'll come on in a second or so, and we'll be able to get him on and everything. But Steve and Nick, I know we're going to talk about some serious issues, but I got to get to some non-serious issues because I was in Clubhouse, but they are interesting issues, and I know that Nick is going to enjoy the first one that I'm going to bring up. But apparently there is a new brand of Girl Scout cookies that is out there that is getting $100 on eBay, because apparently it is getting $100 because it is a rare breed of cookies and all in that. It was actually in the Clubhouse room. It was actually a room from London, and they were talking about that. And I'm sitting there going like, why would anybody pay $100 for a cookie, no matter how rare it is? And then I know sometimes Shaquille talks about the nature of nonprofits. And what I learned is that the Girl Scout troops themselves only get a certain amount of basically pennies, and then the troops themselves get a lot more percentage of that money as well. So I think it was like, I forget the exact figures. It might have been like $1.50 that the troop gets. The young lady that is selling it gets like maybe 25 cents or something along those lines. So Nick, what is your thoughts? Because that is one of them cases where maybe the nonprofits are not necessarily giving the right amount of money to the person that is supposed to be doing it, which is actually the young lady that is selling the cookie. And then, like I said, I'm still trying to figure out who the heck buys $100 cookie, but apparently it's all over eBay and it is very popular, this particular type of cookie. I think it's a raspberry breed, but I'm trying to go and trying to figure out who's buying a cookie of $100, and I'll bring Lee Newton Rhodes in, and maybe he's got some ideas as who would buy $100 cookie and the discrepancy between what the young lady gets in the Girl Scouts and what the organization gets in the Girl Scouts. So any thoughts about this, Lee?
Just give me a minute. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my screen.
I can address the Girl Scout cookie issue. $100 Girl Scout cookies. Wow, that's a little expensive. But Mark, what it really is, it's a donation to the Girl Scouts. So this way, most of the money that goes actually go and hopefully ends up in the Girl Scout pocketbook. In other words, for the benefit of the Girl Scouts. Why I say hopefully is you really have to dig into the Form 990 and look at the details. The devil is in the details. How much actually goes to the Girl Scouts, how much goes to administrative costs, salaries, etc. Now we're going to get that in one of our programs later today, facing off with PBS, and we have some issues there. Another thing that I think was interesting, listening to Steve earlier today about train derailment. I just want to bring this up. So they said actually train derailment have gone down. There's only 1,200 a year of train derailment. Okay, what does that mean? That means to us there's actually 3 or 4 train derailments in the United States a day. Now think about it. 3 to 4 trains will derail by the end of this day. So really what it is the media, are they going to pick up on the derailment or not? How bad was these derailments or not? We don't know. But the fact is,
Nick, along those same lines,
they have 3 or 4 them every day.
Nick, along those same lines, we know that every I say at least once a week, sometimes more often than that, but they say airlines flights are fairly safe, and they're very much the one of the safer modes of transportation and everything. But the only time we really hear about the airline is when there's a crash. But I understand that even though that is one of the most stressful jobs out there, that being an air traffic controller, because you got to control all of those planes flying throughout the air and make sure that they don't crash, that is actually not as common either. But the time that it comes up in the news is when there is a miss and or a collision, and that's around the world. But I was just wondering, if you got thousands, and I do mean thousands of planes crisscrossing every day and everything, that the fact that there are not more crashes is actually amazing.
Right. But we'll see, that's what gets me, Mark. Okay, what you just said. There's thousands of planes that travel every day and there's no wrecks. Right. In the train industry, there's 1,200 a year, or 3 or 4, you have to imagine, wrecks a day. Okay. And what happens, all you have to do is go look at it. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. Go look at our train system, then go look at what they have in Europe. Go look at what they have in China. Go look at what they have in Japan. Our train system was like built in the 1800s. In other words, the rails are rotten, rusted, and what the heck? Our infrastructure is really, really poor. And if they're ever going to, in Washington, D.C., spend money, or somebody spend money, maybe make the railway spend money, would probably be better.
Yeah, I think under the ARP plan, there was a lot of money going into rails and ports. So I wasn't.
When was the last time a rail train?
When's the last time a rail derailed? 3 of them are going to happen today. 3 to 4 today, Mark. 3.
No, I hear you, but when was the last time trains? I don't know the answer, and maybe somebody's listening can know the answer that's into trains and everything. But when was the last time the train rails were changed? I'm guessing probably the 1800s or the 1900s, because I know that here in Durham, North Carolina, which was a railroad stop and everything at one point, that's actually what it was built on, is being one of the stops on the railroad. But some of those rail tracks have been changed, because one of the jobs that I work at, measurement, is actually on the old track, which is actually closer to like Durham High School and everything around that area. But the newer tracks are actually closer to downtown.
Do we have high-speed rail in through Durham?
There is no
high-speed rail connecting Durham to Charlotte, or Durham to Raleigh to Washington, D.C. The answer is no. We have no high-speed rail. Now, I'm going to go to Spain next month. Everywhere I go, everywhere has high-speed rail.
Nick,
Seville.
I have a question. Nick, why are these derailments happening?
We're behind Spain? Are you serious? when it comes to
No, we
our-
have a freeway system, Nick.
the
That's where you get in
freeway
your
system-
car
the
and you
freeway
can
system
drive.
is clogged. Our freeway system is a bloody joke. You know, Interstate 95 that runs up and down.
No, it's only because you're spoiled.
What?
And you're spoiled. You're a trust baby.
I
So
am
you're used to
spoiled.
getting your way, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
Okay.
Nick?
And the thing is, what I don't like to do is see your country be a third world or fourth world country behind Spain, Italy, and frankly,
I'm perfectly happy driving my car.
No, you
I
have
don't
one
want
You're
to
minute.
get
not
on
driving your
high-speed
car.
rail.
You're sitting on a parking lot if you're in the United States of America, except where you're out west.
I like driving. See, we're in the West where
where no one
things are
lives.
wide open.
Yeah. Well, let's get real. You're in the West where no one lives. Okay.
Nick, why are we seeing
That is a
derailments?
good point.
You, Dan, and a couple other people. You know, I mean, there's more people in my county than the whole state of Wyoming.
Well, see,
you
you're
know, that's
see, you
just
city
ridiculous.
folks. See, you just demand all these
Absolutely.
special services. Us country folks are not willing to pay it for it.
Where's
We
the
don't
just-
care.
where's the- we just call
We
it
don't
the
care
city
about
sucker?
your needs, right? We
You're a country
don't
folk.
care. You've created your own
Yeah, but
problems.
you don't have any votes because you don't have any people. So forget it.
Well,
You don't have
well,
to
see,
listen.
the thing is, though, we're represented equally in the Senate,
I
right?
know that is a big mistake.
That is a big mistake because it keeps you
It's a
people
big
from
mistake our
stealing
forefathers made years ago.
stealing
We need
from
to
the
change
rest
that.
of us, right? That keeps you
That,
from
that
stealing
thing
from
needs
the
to be
rest of
changed
us
a long
to
time
create
ago.
your progressive projects that only benefit you and nobody else.
It benefits the whole country.
How?
Dan. Okay, I mean the thing is, if you have to imagine that our rail system is behind Spain, okay, that to upgrade it.
Well,
to
it depends
the
on
level of
how you
Spain,
look at it, Nick.
or upgrade it to the level of Italy. Okay, you got to imagine that we're falling into a third world country because of the leadership and because the people out west just don't give a rat's rear.
Nick,
The people out
Nick,
west don't have the vote.
We care more about our water and our resources and other
Right.
no,
things.
but Nick and Dan, hold
Let's
on a
get
You
second.
guys
real.
are
Hold on a
you
second.
guys
Nick
are
and Dan.
already
Whoever
Nick
had
and
it.
Dan,
destroyed
aren't
your
we behind?
ecosystem. Your people have destroyed the land out there. I mean, it's
But Nick and Dan,
cities are sprawling, right?
hold on a second. Nick
And
and Dan,
nobody
I
lives
do have
out
a
where you're at.
question.
It's scorpions. Come on.
Aren't we
Scorpions
behind?
don't
I
live
know
there
that
all
we're
over.
supposed to be a first world, and I definitely love the United States, contrary to what some people that are watching may think and everything. But it definitely, we are behind on a couple of categories, including education, including water safety, including. a
Yeah, and
number
it's
of
all
We
Nick's
are not.
fault. It's all Nick's fault.
That's true. I'm here to change that. Me and Newton Rhodes, we're going to change this.
Yeah, Nick, I have a question for you. These are trains. If we're so backwards, why are we seeing these derailments and crashes like on the New York City subways in like the
Okay,
metro in
because-
Washington?
Okay, because they're not being reported. See, what they reported today, which is a very interesting stat, go fact check it. 1,200 derailments take place in the United States a year, which translates to 3 or 4 a day. Okay, so why aren't we seeing it? It's because your media isn't showing it. It's not that it's not happening. By the time we're done and you listen to the program tomorrow, there'll be 3 or 4 derailments.
That's because they're all protecting Buttigieg.
all protecting.
No, we're not doing that.
Well,
But I
well,
have a question.
obviously
I have a
he's
question
not
to
doing
Lee's
it.
point and everything.
You know, I don't
Hold
know
on a second.
why-
Greatest transportation.
I have a
secretary
question to
in the
Lee.
history of-
I have a
If you
question
look,
to
we
Lee's
got
point.
30.5 billion from the ARP, 30.5 billion from into federal funding for public transportation systems. But I've been saying this time and time again. There's not enough a way to track where this money is going, and my concern has
No
always
pun
been
intended.
the longer time that goes on, where we don't see where is this money going, and is
Steve,
it
what do you mean
going-
there's no way to track? There's an organization.
It's off the rail. Off the rail.
Steve? Steve, there's a link you can go open the books. There's a guy who's actually trying to track every dollar spent by the federal and state governments. Open the books. It's worthwhile to look at.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
it's
we got
interesting.
I like
Sasha.
that.
Putting
Let's take
anything
a
into
quick
the train.
digression. Sasha, Ukrainian forces may be fleeing for the recent attack on Bakhmut. Can you give us a quick update on Ukraine?
What's happening in Bakhmut? Let's get straight to the point.
Yeah, please.
Currently, most of the attacks and fighting in Bakhmut is happening to be by private army of Mr. Prigozhin, so-called Wagner Group. Now, the aim is using the prisoners and other similar soldiers of war.
Thugs.
Regardless of losses, they are doing attacks every hour, losing 90% of the troops, start new attack in an hour, losing another 90%, a new attack in an hour. They're doing 18 to 20 attacks in 24 hours segment. What their calculation is that, yes, we understand they're losing enormous amount of men. But Ukrainians are also losing, even far less than we, but they do lose their men. So because we are a much larger country with much more population, so this arithmetic that we will lose 3 times as much or even 4 times as much men as Ukrainians, this is very good deal for us. Let's continue doing. This is what's happened. Now, Ukraine now understand the actually the aim of Moscow, just to keep killing as many people on both sides. It doesn't matter in which proportion, 3-1, 4-1. It just doesn't matter, just keep killing. So Ukrainians are now, they have a fortification not far behind the Bakhmut. So they are slowly retreating to these fortifications. And they have special army units in Bakhmut to secure the movement of their armed forces, help as much as to civil population as they can. And this is exactly what's happened there. So it's not something that, Russian, they unleash absolutely incredible attack, and they're using some incredible technology and incredible tactics or so on. That's not the case. They just keep killing people, their own Ukrainians. It just doesn't matter. So
I understand that they're out of bullets. Really, they're out of Russians are out of ammunition.
Dan, it's not the most important thing what's happening right now. There are some Ukrainian based units. You can call them partisan units, or you can call them resistance units. It's hard to say at this moment. They are now operating on the Russian territory, very successfully so. And there is an indication that they are getting support from the population, of Russian population, in the areas close to the front line. So we are talking about Belgorod, Kursk, all these areas. And that could lead to a war inside Russia. And it's not will be just this armed forces that are there, but the actually Russian population of these places, they can uprise against this war, against
Sasha,
the regime. Yes?
I just a question for you. Do you foresee an end to this in terms of Russia being brought to its knees, or peace between the two countries?
Well, at this point, I don't see a peace between two countries because they are too far apart. Like Russia wants unconditional
But what about a deal about? But there's been talk about possibly if there were a deal, Crimea and Donbass in exchange for membership with NATO. Do you just think that's not in the horizon?
Well, right now, the position of Ukraine is somewhat inflexible in terms that all they want is Russian armies to get out of Ukraine entirely to the borders of 1991. As much as it is unrealistic, but the major problem is this. Whatever peaceful agreement will be there, how you guarantee that? Who is going to guarantee that? You remember Budapest Memorandum, and Russia, who was signatory to Budapest Memorandum, was the first one actually to absolutely ignore it and actually going completely against everything what's been written there. So who is going to guarantee? The only one guarantee could be membership of in NATO. Now, this is not a simple exercise because now NATO has to get involved in a really hot area where there is a brutal war is going on. And let's see that by the time that there was some kind of peace agreement, the Ukraine will become, and very quickly, rather quickly, member of NATO. And then Russia will collect more arms and more soldiers and so on. And let's see, 6-9 months later, we'll start again attack at Ukraine. And NATO will have no choice as to go into direct confrontation with Russia, which is apparently what NATO was so far trying to avoid. This is
well, we're going to be talking about this again on his show this week.
On Tuesday and Friday at 11 o'clock. Hey, Steve, there's another couple of countries that are in the news that we sometimes talk about, but we don't always talk about, but they are allies of ours. And I just wonder what people's thoughts are, because apparently South Korea is going to compensate people that were forced to work under Japan's 1910 to 1945 occupation of Korea in a bid to improve poor relations that have impeded trade and cooperation between the two countries for generations. And there's disagreement over labor and women forced into the Japanese military brothel that have bedeviled ties between the two pivotal U.S. allies for years. But South Korean President Yoon Suk Yeol has made a push to repair the relationship. And in a statement, President Biden said the announcements were a groundbreaking new chapter of cooperation and partnership between two of the United States' closest allies and a critical step to forge a future for the Korean and Japanese people that is safer, more secure, and more prosperous. Any thoughts around this and around Biden saying that this is a great thing that is going on? Because apparently, those are two of our allies, and they've been not exactly friendly because of some stuff that happened way back when. But now they're going to make up, but they're going to kiss and make up.
So what's going to happen, Mark? South Korea is going to pay South Koreans, or what's the deal? I mean, this is World War II. You're talking about ancient history now.
So about a dozen protesters demonstrated outside, said it's a complete victory by Japan, which has said it will not pay a single yen on the forced labor issue, according to Lim Jae-sung, a lawyer for several victims, citing media reports of the deal. And
they can't be still alive.
Yeah,
they can't be victims. They're everybody's dead. It's sort of like the reparations for Black Lives Matter. All the slaves are dead. There are no more slaves.
Dan, even Germany's stopping to pay because there's no one alive anymore that was in camps.
Yeah, right. The British are going to pay reparations to all the people who died in the American Revolutionary War.
Yeah, I think they ought to. I mean, that sounds right. And any of their relatives on both sides, it doesn't matter.
Let's pay reparations to all the Americans.
Yeah. Why? I mean, that just really makes a lot of sense.
I guess
it doesn't matter that the U.S. lost
we tend to live in our
lives, men defending the right to free slaves, right? So we gave our blood and treasure to. So it's already been paid. You guys need to go fish, right?
Dan, you're a lawyer. Can you explain to someone like me what it means to have standing to bring a case?
Standing?
It means that you got to have standing to bring a case.
So why do these people don't have standing, do they?
Standing means that if let's say you and Dan have a dispute, and I jump in and I have nothing to do with the dispute,
right?
And I sue one of you guys for the cause of action. So you run over Dan's cat, and then I come in and I sue.
You can run over my cat. I don't have one.
Okay. So I
like that.
And I
Nick, I get that.
You for running over his cat.
Nick, I get that. But if our grandparents had a dispute, just because our grandparents had a dispute doesn't mean we do, does it?
No. It would be great grandparent. I mean, it would be a while ago, right?
Yeah. I mean,
we're talking about all these spoiled babies in this era that are trying to get paid off for something that happened ages ago.
Well, I mean, apparently this case was all the way back in 1965. Because
Oh, you want reparations, Mark?
Hold on a second.
been
Japan has
marginalized?
maintained that the compensation issue was settled under the 1965 treaty. And so this was something way back in 65, and relationships plunged to their lowest point in decades after the South Korea Supreme Court in 2018 ordered Japanese firms to pay reparations to former forced laborers. So 15 South Koreans have won such cases, but none has been compensated. So I don't know if these are the children
No, that never happened.
or
Yeah.
whatever.
Dead. They're all dead. This is World War II. Why don't we give? And see, the reparations stuff works two different ways. Remember Haiti, when they freed the slaves? Part of the reason Haiti is such a mess, they paid reparations to France. Why?
Yep.
Because for their freedom. You know, this reparations stuff.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
You know?
No, it's like I think the U.S. owes reparations to the Mormons.
To who?
The Mormons,
Oh,
because they took an army and tried to attack us. Plus, in Missouri, our people were murdered and forced out of the state.
And boy, you
By the
hear that all
government.
the time in Mormon land. I'll tell you, they
yeah.
can't stop living in the past, baby.
That's right,
the
baby.
guys
Well, there was a lot
That's
of living
right,
in the
David.
past by a lot of
Well,
folks.
I
but
mean, the point is,
live
I
in the
don't,
future.
I'm not asking for reparations. I think it's
Present
ridiculous.
and the future.
Just like Mark's argument about reparations is ridiculous.
you
I
know,
didn't make
Stuff-
an argument.
bad
So I
stuff
was- I was
happened to
just
all
talking
of our
about what
peoples.
was happening there. So I didn't make an argument one way or the other, Dan. So you're making assumptions. You know what they say about assumptions. So
Yeah, I know.
not
It-
necessarily
it
one
makes
way or
an-
the
it
other.
makes an ass
Hey,
of you, I
Mark.
understand.
Dan's filling in for Shaquille, so he'll tell you what you think.
Exactly.
Even though you're
That's,
here.
that's my job.
Yeah,
here,
apparently.
We
because
don't need to
I'm
listen to you.
Hey,
I'm
but I do
filling
have a
in for
question
Shaquille.
because
It's my
apparently the
job to
CPAC
tell
was
you what
going
you
on
think.
this weekend as well, and some people say that Nikki shot herself in the foot before she even got running. So some people are saying that she's already dead in the water and all of that based on
Nikki Haley?
Nikki
Yeah,
Haley
'cause-
doesn't have a chance. Why are we talking
Well, I
about
mean,
Why
she
is
went
she?
against-
Why is
she
she in
went
the hot
against-
water?
You already showed Trump.
What'd she do?
Well, she went up against Bush, and she went against Trump, and she went against a number of other folks, basically calling them out on their leadership. And there's some folks that took issue to that. They also say that right now DeSantis is inching closer to his presidential run announcement with a speech that he's doing in California. So
Mark,
maybe he's going to announce officially.
News flash, Mark. These people are sideshows at the circus. The circus
Sideshow
is
Bob.
coming down, baby.
I don't know why
Donald
Bob
Trump
gets blamed
is
for
the
being a
circus.
sideshow.
And Nick, you're not even
Nikki
showing up.
Haley's
DeSantis
a
didn't show up to
sideshow.
CPAC. Anyone want to explain that?
Sideshows. He's a waste of time.
Yes,
Well, that's what I just said. He's
What is
going to
she,
go to California to
1%?
announce his
Yeah.
campaign
Even Trump
instead.
can't acknowledge her as a potential running anything, you know? So her sideshow, Trump, the ringleader, the master, has arrived. So you're going to have to deal with Trump.
So it's going to be a rematch of Trump against.
Till he gets
Biden
indicted.
Joseph
in-
R.
They'll
Biden.
both get
Joseph
indicted.
Robinette
It'll be Trump
Biden.
Biden.
Both get indicted.
The
It'll
president
be the
of the United
Centurion
States.
contest.
The
You know,
president
they're
of
both
the United
going to be
States.
100 years old running against each other. Hey,
I have a question. Nick. What
Steve
is
for president. Steve for
Crazy.
president.
Okay,
Steve left.
I would like
No,
to
Steve
ask
left. I
Nick
don't know why.
this question. If Republicans indeed want Trump to get out of the race, if someone, for example, like Mike Pence, is a genuine candidate,
No, he's
so
not.
it's in,
No, he's not.
so you don't think that he will even run?
You said,
No,
first of all, you
because
said the word if.
He's a
Let's-
traitor, and nobody
Okay,
would vote
let's
for him.
just get real. Mike Pence has zero charisma. Not even.
Oh, I agree.
Yes,
I'm not
zero
his.
chance.
Mike
Double
Pence
zero.
not
is a
Trump, but
Zero,
my
Mike Pence.
Steve has a better chance of winning the Republican
God,
nomination
he's zero.
than Mike Pence.
No, but my question is why Mike Pence for
And he's a
example, tried
Democrat.
to help Trump.
Mike Pence.
You know what? You know what, Joe Biden?
He's
Joe
trying
Biden.
to stop
Joe
him
Biden.
simply by refusing a subpoena and fighting it and so on. I don't think that he will succeed, but he's trying.
Nick, how important is charisma?
He's going to get the nomination.
I'm gonna.
Okay.
You know what, Joe Biden
Trump has
should use?
charisma.
Why would Joe
None of these
Biden-
other clowns do.
I would-
Sanders
Hey,
is
Joe
just,
Biden has Nick. Joe Biden has charisma.
If I was Joe Biden, I'd take a nap.
Nick, but I think certain people
hide
in
in the bunker
history,
like
like
those
for
last
example,
election.
Biden.
Adolf
really do.
Hitler, had a
Joe
lot
Biden-
of charisma.
Joe Biden
Let
should
Jill
take,
tell him what
you
to
know
do.
what's happened.
Joe Biden
Hold on a
should take
second.
lines from American President movie played by Michael Douglas, where he said, just like he goes, you know, he should say, Donald. He shouldn't call him President Trump. Say, Donald, Donald Trump is good at two things: getting people afraid of it and selling it, and that wins elections. Donald, your 10 seconds is up. My name is Joe Biden, and I am the president. Just shut him up. Just
That's assuming the guy can.
That's really stupid, Steve. That's really stupid. Now,
But
see,
Donald
Trump-
I think my suggestion.
That's assuming that he can remember where
a
he's
better
at.
idea. You run as a Republican candidate for president.
There you go. Well,
He's
well,
I like
gonna-
that idea.
Okay, we're gonna have
Hey,
Steve Brown.
and I got to be honest with you. I mean, I have a lot of Republican friends. And
So he could be a Republican.
I
really.
think
He
that-
tried hard.
I
Hold
think,
on.
but you know what?
I
Honestly,
was a closet Republican.
You're more of a Bush Republican, right?
but Dan, there are both parties. There are members of both parties that have decent ideas, and unfortunately, I think what's happened is that the extremes of each party have taken control, and so it's taken away the common sense, pragmatic politicians. I mean, there used to be a time when Democrats and Republicans could work well together, but the problem is that it's just
Reagan's been dead a long time.
well, I know, but the problem is it was a different era. Now so much is driven by the social media, the tweets, the expectations, what it's done is it's actually fueled this urban and rural divide in America, right? So,
Oh yeah, world.
and I think that's the biggest challenge. The thing is, and I'm gonna go on a limb here to say that, and I know Dan Worthington would agree with me, but I think it's fine to I don't think anyone on this show condones racism. I can speak for all of us on that. I think part of the problem is we spend so much time focusing on our differences that we often forget that the one thing that we all have in common is we're American. And, there are things that we can focus on, like infrastructure, a good economy, global competitiveness, and good ideas from Democrats and Republicans about those issues. But I think it's just come down to that, right? And I know Mark Lee, for example, he's been a big proponent of a lot of the issues, giving a lens of the minority perspective. But I can tell you, knowing Mark Lee the way I know him, there is a conservative streak inside him. He's a very hard worker. He doesn't use
Look
his
at that!
race.
Look at that puzzled look.
No, I mean, and I don't think Mark.
Mark, you're a conservative now.
No, he's not a conservative, but he's not. He doesn't. I
No,
know
he's not. He's not crazy left. No.
No, but I can say that, and I'm not either. I'm a man of color. Now, I think the other thing I'll say, which is interesting, and I think it's a lot psychological. You have to look at my upbringing. Even though my parents were immigrants from India, I grew up in a predominantly white state. So for much of my life, I wasn't allowed to talk about race much in my house, but I didn't even know that I was brown. I still today, I'm not as conscious of my race because when I went to a school, unlike Morrisville, which is 45% Indian, imagine waking up as an 7-year-old kid and that there was not one person of color in my entire school. Not one.
Steve, on the flip side of that, imagine going to a school where you had 3 homecoming queens. So y'all say that I speak from a race.
And only one was a woman.
No, it was actually African American, a European American, and a Native American homecoming queen, and they did that.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed the joke.
Steve, may I ask you a question? Have you seen the movie on Netflix by the name Designated Survivor?
Yeah.
Have you seen it there? Okay, so they have a very interesting approach that the main hero of the movie, he's designated survivor, so everybody was killed and he was declared the president. And then there was election, and he decided to run as independent, not affiliated with any of two major parties, and he won. Okay.
Well, that won't happen though here.
It just can't happen.
It's not going to happen in real life, and you know why.
No.
And you know why the America cannot be united, because the Democrats and Republicans, they are fighting for the victories in presidential election, in even Supreme Court, even in the state elections and all that stuff. So
Yes.
they're major supporters, contractors. So they will get government contractors. They will decide and financially benefit from it, therefore supporting even more in the future the certain.
Yeah, that's how it works.
And that's how it works.
No, that's how it works. But
and if
I
you
got a
know
question for
how it
everybody
works,
on them.
there is nothing can be helped.
No, but I got a question for everybody on the panel. We all know that at the not knocking the federal government is a very important part of our government structure, but
It is.
we follow
Too
national
big.
politics.
It's too
Hold on a
important,
second. We
Mark.
follow national politics all year long. We do follow local politics during the election cycles when the local politics happen, but most of us are very conscientious and try to study things on a general way. I read Lee Newton Rhodes' columns and his stuff that he does on LinkedIn, so I know he studies a lot of things. But how many of the average citizens do you think actually pay attention to local politics, like where Steve is in Morrisville and where I'm at here in Durham, outside of the time of the campaign? And that's where I think is one of the big issues and one of the big problems is that they might do it during that November time of the elections, but how often do you hear people actually paying attention to their city council and or their soil and water people and a number of other things that are going to have a more direct impact on them than the national politics?
Very few.
I would say very
Exactly.
few.
No one
What
cares.
percentage? Probably less than 10%. What do you think, Dan?
Well, I mean, just look at the number of people who vote in local elections.
Yeah,
They
that's my
don't
point.
care. I mean, I don't care.
We need to have more people caring. That was my point exactly. Nick, I was going to come back to your other favorite thing because you were hiding, and I was going to actually answer what I think Lee's question was, because I want to say that there was some upgrades, and it might have been after Sandy, but there was some fairly recent upgrades to the New York subway system, if I remember correctly. And I could be wrong, but there is, you're always talking about Europe doing a lot better. There was actually a crash in Greece. So there was a crash there that actually has thousands protesting there over a deadly train crash there in Greece. And the Greek prime minister has asked the High Court to expedite the cases for their rail disasters.
Well, no, in Greece, they
Rail
protest
disasters don't happen
regularly
in other
about
parts of the
anything.
world as well.
They really don't have to have a cause to protest in Greece. It's just what they do. They protest about. It's kind of like in the U.S. You just get a bunch of people together and signs and placards paid by somebody else, and they protest. You can tell that that's what's happened because they're printed signs. These people didn't make the signs. Somebody handed printed signs out to them on one issue or another, right? It's really a joke.
What do you mean by printed signs? Because I actually helped make some of those signs some time back. So I know that you actually get
There we
to
go.
make some of the signs, and
Well, now
sometimes
we
the
know-
signs
now
are
we
actually
know-
physically
now we know who
made,
to
and
blame.
sometimes they spend a lot of time on those signs because I was involved in some
Now
of that
we-
sign making.
now
There
we
was
know
whole
who to
sign-making
blame.
parties.
So that's
Mark, I think Dan's
That
point
would
is
be
that
good too.
this is a side gig for these people. They're not doing it because they care. They're doing it because they're getting paid to show up and
Oh,
protest.
I know.
No, I got that.
That-
I got
that's
what he was just
exactly
saying, but
it.
he was knocking sign makers, and I do know
It's
for
like
a
the
fact that
37,000
sign makers
people
are
that
actually a
were
real thing,
invited by
and some of those signs
Obama
are
to do
actually
this
spend a lot of time
Mara,
making those
whatever
signs.
it was. They all ended up being protesters that organized the rocks and everything and these things that happen in these big cities. I mean, the money had to come from somewhere. The logistics had to be handled somehow. That's how it was handled.
Hey, Dan,
not
don't
saying
these
that-
people have jobs? I mean, can you imagine you go to your employer and say, hey, I can't go to work today. Why? Well, I'm going to be protesting and I need
I'm an
signs."
anarchist. That's
Well,
what I do.
That is the job of some of them, and some of them do
Nick,
actually
I
have jobs.
think
I know
it
quite
depends.
a few
if you're
protesters
working
that
for a living,
have
you're working
some pretty
hard,
good jobs.
make money. You don't
Nick,
have
it
signs run
depends.
out
It depends
over
how much
the
your work pays you and how much you will get on the side for a
How
protest.
much you get paid for
If you
being
will
an
get
anarchist?
more money
right?
as
I
a
mean,
protester, of
these
course you
guys
will
get
go to
paid to
protest.
do that, right? So
Hey,
they get
let's
paid
not-
more to sit on their butts and go protest, and that's what
Well,
they do.
speaking of folks, hold on a second. I'm glad you mentioned that because speaking of sitting on the butts, and I said I was going to get to some other issues and everything because I had one that I wanted to get to, and I want to hear Lee's perspective of it. We know that the NCAA is about to happen, go Golden Eagles in the Big East Championship and go in the tournament because we will be making it to the tournament as well. But there's this new concept that is out there now called load management. It's in the NBA, and it's basically where folks are getting frustrated because you come to the game and you're hoping to see LeBron James or somebody else play that is the star of the team, and they're not playing because they're doing this thing called load management, which is trying to protect the athletes because you don't want the athletes to be hurt in the playoffs. So I just wondering, one, Sasha, can load management work in chess? And two, what is y'all's thoughts about this? Because it's making a lot of folks upset. There's been a lot of articles in social media about people highly upset because they're like, look, I grabbed my kid, paid a couple of $100s to go see the game, and it's not just in basketball. I think it's in hockey. It's in a number of other sports. And the star's not playing. He's over there sitting in his street clothes, and not because he can't play, but because his management said that it was they were protecting his.
First of all, LeBron James isn't worth it, so forget that. He's not worth going to see and paying a couple $100 to go, whether he plays or he doesn't. Right? It's just.
But what about Seth Curry? That makes sense.
Well, Seth Curry, he's a good guy. But see, Mark, you're missing the point. See, why spend anything when I can go sit in my easy chair, put back my recliner with my cup holder, and watch the game for free? Then I can say anything I want, and nobody has to listen to me. I can actually see the game better because it's on TV, right? I can hear the sounds. I get the commentary. What a good deal.
And some commercials.
Yeah, some commercials. It's okay. Some commercials are all right.
Mark, I think you're frozen.
Mark's frozen. His face is frozen.
Good. I'll make my comment, all right, about that, because here's the problem. What you just said, Dan, spending the $200. The first thing I do is I pull out the book, The Millionaire Next Door.
Next door, yeah.
I read through it. And would the millionaire next door spend $200 to go a basketball game?
No.
Oh, the answer is no. Why?
It's an
The
easy
millionaire
chair.
next door likes having money in his pocket.
Yeah,
Now,
exactly.
the poor man who doesn't live next door will spend the
Or
$200
schmuck.
and go.
Schmuck. Yeah.
What? Yeah,
Or
and then
schmuck.
they'll want their student loans
Speak the word,
forgiven.
Dan.
They'll want a charity handout.
You translate it.
Cry tears to Biden. No, I need more money.
Well, I mean, we should save our money and go to NASCAR instead.
Yeah, but what you want to do is go to
Now,
this
LeBron
book,
wants to
Millionaire
race
Next Door, and
NASCAR.
see what
I
he
mean,
would
we're
Yeah, but there is
He's not
another angle
gonna
to look at it. These people
They
are
still
not
are not going to see Taylor Swift and Beyonce.
okay.
Well, Taylor Swift and Beyonce could race NASCAR too. That would
These
really
people
quick-
want to cancel
Imagine
their
going to
student
NASCAR.
loans.
Not going to NASCAR.
Okay, they want to
take a-
cancel their student loans, but they don't
I tried,
want
Steve,
to
give
get
on it.
money back for
Oh,
their
that's
basketball
true.
tickets
That's
or
true.
buying tickets or so on. That's all right. They don't demand to get this money back. Student loan is a different. They want to get education for free. Why don't you get for free these shows and all this
because it
basketball
costs money to go to school.
No, it doesn't. If you go to the right schools, it doesn't cost anything. And
Okay.
Right.
It-
But
it
if
does
you want to
cost,
go to
Nick.
Ivy League.
Someone's paying for it.
nothing. And let me
Someone's paying for it.
explain- Let me
Nick.
explain.
They're not working for free, these professors.
Let me explain.
Well, they
this.
should be working for free
If
because
you graduate from a Georgia high school with a 3.0 average, which isn't that hard, you get to go to Georgia Southern, University of Georgia, and Georgia Tech for free. Okay?
No, that's not true, Nick. That's not true. You get to go at taxpayer expense. There's a big difference. It's not
No,
for free.
taxpayer either.
Somebody pays.
You're telling me these professors are working for free?
No.
No.
Lee. Here's how it's
He's
funded.
talking
Here-
about the out of pocket.
Listen. I'm the master now. Here's how it's funded. The
Master-
Georgia State
Master Nick.
Lottery funds the scholarships. So it's not even taxpayer.
So those are the
It's people that run
schmucks
to
that actually
the
buy
lottery
the
and
lottery
they pay.
tickets, right?
So all these people that are in student loans didn't look at all the options. By the way, that's just one option. I went through a whole laundry list of good
did the
universities.
millionaire next door invest in the lottery tickets?
The,
No.
the millionaire next door, let me read it, does not buy lottery tickets, but thanks all the people that did that sent their kids to school for free.
That's it.
Hey,
That's
So real
that's it.
quickly, guys, let's shift the show real quickly to go to education reform in Florida. So Governor DeSantis is proposing to the legislature they change what can be taught in schools, banning gender, sexuality training, and also banning what's in schools. It looks like it's going to pass, but this is an issue that I think is going to be happening in the country. It's also happening in North Carolina. Tonight, by the way, Governor Roy Cooper in North Carolina will be delivering his State of the State address, and giving the Republican address is Mark Robinson, the current lieutenant governor, a man who is on the cusp of banning this kind of education in the classrooms. And many people say that he will be endorsed by Trump and the right-wing conservatives, but it's pretty much his endorsement to be the governor. What's amazing is Mark Robinson, he gave one speech about guns at a Greensboro City Council meeting and went from having no political office to just being a guy that I think had declared bankruptcy a couple of times, really been I don't even think he's had gainful employment for much of his life.
Why is that
Kind of like
relevant?
Santos. Kind of like
And then
Santos.
it could be Steve, but why is that relevant?
How can you be governor of a state without having no work experience?
I get it, yeah.
We have a Washington full of people with no private work experience.
I think being
Yeah,
governor is different.
Biden never worked a day in his life.
Well, he was a U.S. senator. He had some experience.
Well, I mean, yeah, but yeah,
but
we could go into that record.
but anyway, what are you
Want-
thinking about this educational ban? Do you think it's a good
What-
thing? I know what Dan Worthington thinks.
Steve, why do we have schools to begin with? What's the purpose of schools? It's the purpose
To
for them
indoctrinate the kids.
or is it to teach them reading, writing, and arithmetic? What's the purpose of schools?
Yeah, see, I'm all for these bans on all this crazy stuff, right? Parents shouldn't have to deal with that, or think that the teachers in their classrooms are going to be indoctrinating them and trying to convert them to these crazy ideas, right? Life is hard enough. Why don't we? Parents should have a say in what's taught. If they want to teach them about transgenderism and junk, let them do it at home. They can have picture books and all kinds of things, but not in the public schools. There's too much to learn. There are too much precious things to learn and so little time to learn it in. Our public schools are failing because our schools are focused on crap that just poisons the minds of our children, doesn't teach them responsibility about financial literacy or any of the other things that really matter in life. And so, Steve, I agree that we need to get back to educating our children instead of trying to indoctrinate them with a bunch of social liberal crap that all benefits who? One side, the Democrats, not just any Democrats, the liberal Democrats. Steve, you're not that crazy, I know.
Well,
Just a little.
I agree with you, Dan.
And Nick, you're not
That was a compliment,
crazy.
Steve.
that schools should teach science, technology, engineering, math,
Yeah,
things that are hard, things
well,
that
in English,
you
yeah.
want to learn, but that's the
Hard
reason you go to
work.
school. It's like the
It's
reason you go
hard
to work.
Nick, you can throw in there vocational also.
Oh, you're right. Vocational. You're absolutely right, Lee. Vocational. There's a lot of fun stuff if you want to learn it. Go learn it on your own. Oh, you're right. Vocational. You're absolutely right, Lee.
Welcome back, Mark.
Yeah, even Mark would agree.
No,
with
I'm
that.
glad to be back, but I do have a question
Well,
for y'all
Mark,
about
seriously,
that.
ask him if he agrees.
No, I have a question for y'all about that.
I'll be like,
Privacy of your own home.
I'll
Mark,
tell
you can
people,
dress up all you want. I would shave the beard a little bit, but you can dress up all you want in the privacy of your own home.
Yeah, you can learn. Look, school should be hard for students. Seriously, you got to take stuff that you hate, or you don't want to learn, or it's difficult. And so, science, technology, engineering, math.
No, I agree with that.
That's right.
Nick,
you
but
just
what
said,
about the
Lee,
schools,
that
and this is
should
where I
be
was
taught.
going to ask
You wanna
Dan
learn all
and
this
you,
social stuff,
what about the
go
schools
learn
that
at
have
school.
a
Go learn on
specific
your own
agenda?
time.
There
Have
are
an
schools, y'all say
after-school
that, y'all
program.
say that there are
Do it
liberal
after
agendas, but there are also religious schools.
Send
I
your
know for a
checks.
fact
Learn it
that
after
Yeah,
they
well,
don't
that's
feel like
that's
they went to a
true, and
Christian
they're
school.
normally private. They're more normally.
But I'm just saying,
private.
but
Private dollar.
but so if it's private dollars, it has a different set of rules. Or are we saying that they need to be teaching the same thing if they're like?
you
No,
don't
they
teach
can.
any of that
They're
garbage.
private schools,
I
so
made
they
a
can
big
cheat.
mistake
They can.
when
they
I was
can-
in college. I became a political science major. That was a joke. It took me immediately after I graduated to figure out that was a big mistake.
Big mistake.
Political science. Okay, there's no
Got
such
you
thing as
fast, though.
political science. It's not a science.
It was easy.
It's a lot of politics. It's a waste of time. So quickly, as soon as I graduated, I went to get an MBA. That's not a waste of time. A master's
No,
in
it
business
isn't.
administration. It's a real thing. I should have gone to engineering school.
Should have.
Please don't dupe your students into going to these stupid social studies programs because they're a waste of time. Nobody's going to hire you, and you got. If you want to learn it, fine. After
Go on
school-
YouTube. There's plenty of stuff on YouTube if you
Nick,
want.
hold on a
to.
second. Nick,
After
hold on a second. You
school-
said the
after school,
NBA
Marcus,
was
after
not.
school,
You said the
you
NBA
grab
was
your
not a
phone.
waste of time, but I do know that is actually a very popular major. Not so much the NBA, but
Doesn't
a
matter
business
if it's
degree.
popular.
And a lot of folks are
Popular-
actually
popularity
concerned that
doesn't
they
mean
are
you're
not
gonna
getting
make
their worth
money.
for that business degree
Okay,
in the
hey, look,
undergraduate
it's
level. I'm not
popular
talking about
to
the
be
NBA
a
level. I'm
recreation
talking about the
major.
undergraduate level.
PE major. Good luck. Good luck. Somebody's gonna hire you
Mark,
for
can I backtrack on your question before?
Yes.
The purpose of a game, NBA or any sport, the purpose of a team is not to win a game. It's to win the season and a trophy. However they want to do that. Individual games are meaningless in the scheme of things. And if they need to rest a player or do whatever they want with the roster, that's in the best interest of the team in the long run, they should do that.
But in
That's just
in that
sad.
same kind of
That's
philosophy,
just sad, Lee.
so you have no
Still,
problem with
do you really
because
believe
Brooklyn
that?
actually-
Millionaire next
Hold on
door
a second. The Brooklyn Nets are actually
$200
contending and
on a
strongly
game.
contending.
gonna
So you're
sit
going to tell me
there
that
and
if you
watch
go
on
there,
TV.
you don't expect to see some of the main athletes. I want to say that Blake is playing for Brooklyn.
I don't want players. I don't want the star player playing when he shouldn't be playing, and then not show up for the Super Bowl, for example, or the finals because he played some stupid game in mid-season when he should have been resting.
Yeah, that's true. You know, I boycotted NBA anyway. When they started all this other crazy stuff, I just
That's a set. We could talk about that also. I
That's
thought
a
they were out
separate
of business.
issue, but I have no problem. Unlike some of y'all, I have no problem with an athlete using their platform to bring an issue that they are concerned about. I mean, LeBron
well, I know
James
you
has definitely
wouldn't
done
because
some stuff.
you're going to promote all that kind of stuff.
No,
so
but I'm just
you're
saying, but
okay.
it depends on what they're doing because it's a known fact that LeBron James has actually gone back to Ohio and has actually done some stuff in his communities. As a matter of fact, I just heard recently that I
Well,
think
that's great.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar
Use your
sold
money.
his
Go
equipment
improve
and everything
things,
else, and he
right?
has a problem with low
That's
net,
a
by
good
the way.
thing.
But he sold
But
a lot
don't
of his stuff
shoot your
in order
mouth
to
off,
make some money
right?
in order to give back to the community. Now, is that his prerogative? I think it is. If he wants to sell his championship wear and all of that, and then I think he got like 2.8 million, and then he turned that into giving it to organizations. I think that's
Okay,
his
so Mark, these guys play basketball, they play football, they do whatever they do, right? That's what they get paid for. They don't get paid to shoot off their mouths or embarrass their teams. They
Dan,
don't.
shut up and drizzle and shut up and dribble.
Shut up and dribble is not a good attitude to have in my mind.
On the court it is.
They can
Especially
have
if they're
opinions,
dribbling
and
out of
a
the side of their mouth.
lot of them
It's
had
just
those
not-
opinions when they were in the schools or when they were in high school. So, like I said, you don't know how many of those kids were actually activists when they were in the school and all
I
of
don't,
that. So
I don't
sometimes
care. I would not hire someone like that for my team because they cause trouble in the community and everywhere else. They create division. I don't want people who create division in our
Division is good.
team.
So you're gonna tell me that in your corporation, if there is somebody, or even in your law firms, if there's somebody that has an issue that they are passionate about, you're going to try to squash that passion. For example, we know for a fact that Sasha is pro-Ukraine, and rightfully so. So if he's working in your company and he's organizing some Ukrainian protests, you're going to fire him because he is seeding some sort of
No, first of all, I understand. I'm retired, so it doesn't matter. And I like Sasha. Sasha's very bright. He has this passion about Ukraine. I'm pro-Ukraine. I have my problems with their leader, who I've done a little research on. By the way, if you go look at some of his movies and other literary accomplishments, they are pretty risque. And I mean, he's gay. I mean, it's sort of weird.
He's not
but
gay,
it
he's
fits in
married, I
perfectly
thought.
with the liberal left. I mean,
He's married and has 2 children. Maybe Fox News don't know that.
well, it's okay. I mean, you can be bi. It really doesn't matter.
Mark, it depends if you're doing it on the employer's dime or on your own dime too. Big difference.
Yeah.
Everybody has a private life, but and when you're on the clock, I think the employer has to say what takes place on the floor.
That's right. And
But
standing
there
up
have
for
been
the
some of
Pledge
the
of Allegiance.
employers that actually
stuff like
back
that.
the athletes. That's a known fact, whether it's the WNBA or the NFL or whatever. Some of the employers actually came on the side of the athletes and whatever the issue, whether it's Black Lives Matter or a number of other things. So that's what I'm saying is that if that's the case, I think Mark Cuban came out in that favor as one, and there have been some others as well. And I mean, Doc Rivers, who is a schoolmate of mine, was very adamantly in support of his athletes.
Mark, you brought up Mark Cuban. Those who pay the bills, those with the gold, make the rules.
That's
I
true.
got you. But I'm saying, but Doc Rivers isn't the one.
Yeah, and he's Cuban.
Mark Cuban is Mark Cuban actually Cuban?
No, I just made that up.
Yeah, you're making up jokes and everything in that space. Speaking of which, because I know we're getting ready to wind down and all in that space, I think we got a few more minutes. But I did have to tease Nick about one other news story. I told y'all I was in a clubhouse earlier today, and they had one other story that I think y'all will find interesting and kind of cute. So it's one of the sidebar ones outside of our serious issues that we've been talking about. But apparently in the UK, there is a race going on, and the winner will get to go to Finland. So I am not married, but apparently in the race, it is a wife carrying race. So you get to run around in
Wife
this
carrying race.
with your wife on your back, and all in that space. One person,
I'm too old for that.
one
kind of
person
stuff.
actually carried a dog on their back. I guess that dog was supposed to be their wife, and that I'm also not sure how the rules go and everything. And the big world competition will be in Finland. So apparently this is a world competition and everything. So it is a race that is going on. Who knows? There might be a U.S. version of it, but I don't know who has.
Hey, Mark, I have a question.
Yes.
What is the size of the Champion Cup?
Yeah, that's a good question. And then the other question was there is apparently is restrictions on the weight of the woman, because I think that there is, and I do not do metrics all that well, but roughly what is 50 kilos?
2.2 is the conversion. 2.2.
Well, yeah, you can understand that. Otherwise,
So
the guy
2.2 would
hurt
be
is
like
trying to run
120 pounds. The woman has to be like 120, 140
So you can
pounds.
rent
So
a
that
bike.
rules out some women that you can't have as your person because they might be too
I mean,
heavy.
just out of practicality, Mark, right?
But
I mean,
It's kind of hard.
otherwise you'd be carrying bags of flour on your shoulders instead.
It's kind of hard to hold a woman who weighs more than you do.
well,
It
that's
it
true.
is.
That is very true. And by the way, Steve, you'll be glad to know I was trying to get him on today, but there is a.
That was a
and
highly
I
sexist discussion, by the way.
I did mention it to you as well. I did mention you, Lee, in the process, but there is a gentleman here in, I believe, I'm not sure whether he's in North Carolina, where he's at, but he is running for governor. He wants to run for governor here in
I
North
got a
Carolina.
question,
So I
Mark.
did invite
I'm
him
going for it.
And I did tell him about both Steve and Lee, because he is a blue collar worker. I want to say he's a truck driver or something like that. And he's out of Sophia, North Carolina, but his name is Richard Stanley. So I'm trying to get him to come on, but he is interested in
Please do.
coming on and sharing why he wants to run. I ran into him on LinkedIn, and like
Is
I
he a
said,
Democrat or a Republican?
Is he an
I think he's an independent, from what I got the impression, because he was talking about, and he said that he has to raise. He even told me how much he had to raise, but and I don't know if these figures are correct or not. But he said, "I'd like to run next year, 2024. I need $2,000 to get my name on every ballot in North Carolina." He did say that we could interview him anytime, and I did send him a link today, and then he was having some issues, so maybe he'll come on tomorrow.
Steve might know this answer. Mark, why do states or municipalities charge people to get their name on ballots?
We don't in North Carolina. We don't charge people. It's with the state board of elections, and the way the law of North Carolina is, you can't just put. We don't allow independents to. You have to pay as a candidate to file for office.
Why?
But you can't get on the ballot as an independent.
Why can you be a write-in? Do they allow write-ins?
Yeah.
So how can you get your name on the ballot, Steve, if you're an independent?
You have to. The law of North Carolina says that you have to get a certain number of signatures, a percentage of signatures in the state. So it's very hard. It's a couple 100,000 at least.
They make it very hard for the average Joe to get on the ballot. Why don't you just get rid of it? And everybody should be a write-in candidate, even Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Just have write-in candidates.
Certain states you can get in as an independent, like Angus King in Maine, or other states where it's a little bit easier. So that is a good idea for North Carolina, to actually make it easier reduce the litmus test, or just to let independents file as viable third parties. Then you could get an independent U.S. senator or governor, which I think would be good, actually.
But what is the chances of an independent winning? Because, like I said,
that's a separate discussion. Everybody should be on the table if they want to, even Mickey Mouse.
But I'm just saying, but if Richard Stanley runs, and like I said, I'm hoping to get him on sometimes this week, he would be going up against Josh Stein, who is backed by a very powerful Democratic machine, and Mark Roberts, who is backed by a very powerful Republican machine. So, like I said, what chance does somebody like a Richard Stanley even stand? And by the way, he's very much into the
come on, Mark. What chance did David stand against Goliath?
That's what it is.
Hey, okay, guys, it's time for my closeout. I'm going to go ahead and begin real quickly before I head out. Mark, send me the live link at the end of the show. I didn't get it again today.
Not fault, but I'll do that.
You can run for governor, Steve.
Yeah, well, maybe in a couple of years. I'm on my way, though, for sure. Real quickly, as I close out today, I wanted to, first of all, say that Women's History Month, we're going to continue our discussion of that. Just some famous women that I've been researching: Rosa Parks, Florence Nightingale, Queen Elizabeth, Eleanor Roosevelt. There's so many women around the world. And, of course, we've got one in the White House now, Kamala Harris, but other women leaders around the world. It's going to be interesting to talk about these women, the kinds of things they're doing. And I'll end today with yesterday on 60 Minutes, there was a very interesting talk about artificial intelligence and ChatGPT and whether they had Bradley Smith from Microsoft. And the topic came up of whether we would need a digital regulatory agency that would be able to monitor the ethics of AI in terms of some of these tools like ChatGPT not really being able to be accurate. And so is there an obligation that these companies have? Interestingly enough, Brad Smith from Microsoft said that he wouldn't support a digital regulatory agency. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow because I think that's an interesting topic. And my final take of the day is yesterday was Bloody Sunday, 1965 in Selma, Alabama. John Lewis, at that time a civil rights leader at the infancy of our civil rights revolution here in America, led Bloody Sunday, which was basically on the Elvis Pettis, I think it's Elvin Pettis Bridge, that many people lost their lives fighting for the right to vote. John Lewis would eventually go on to become a United States congressman, and until his last day in office, until his last dying breath, did everything he could to make sure that all Americans had a right to vote. I think it's important for us to understand and appreciate these efforts for voting, regardless of who you vote for.
Some people can even vote more than once.
Yeah, well, not only that, but the right to vote is an important constitutional right, and we must make sure that we honor that. So we will remember Bloody Sunday in 1965 in Selma, and remember those brave Americans who fought on for, and eventually their efforts did lead to progress in the civil rights legislation that was passed by Lyndon Johnson. But we'll be talking about this a little bit later in the week. But thank you all for being with us. Tomorrow, we'll talk a little bit about the changing role of China in the global economy and the world, a little bit on artificial intelligence and its future, and what does it mean? Do we want digital regulatory authority in the United States to govern ethics in AI? Thank you very much. This is Steve Rouse signing off. We'll be back tomorrow for another edition of Pod and Roku TV's World Edition.